So Stranraer, as many of you will know, suffered a major economic and social shock 13 years ago when the Stena line relocated the ferry to Belfast up the coast to Cairnryan. And that really was a knock to the community. And as you can see from that slide there, it's an extraordinary statistic that the number of people experiencing multiple deprivation doubled after the ferry left in 2011. So that's extraordinary. There's then been, following that, there's been kind of like these years of community fatigue and promises that were made about investment that people felt were not being honoured. And to be honest, there was a sort of like, this was this strange situation where Stranraer seemed to be locked in this continual argument with itself. Like some group would come forward and go, let's do this. And then everyone else goes, no, we hate that group, let's not do that. So yeah, well, that's community politics, but it was kind of extreme in Stranraer because there was this promise of this £6 million sitting somewhere in Scottish government, and everyone was going, oh, we've got a great idea for the £6 million. It was like, no, we don't want your idea for the £6 million. We want our idea for the £6 million. So it just was going nowhere, and everyone was getting really disheartened. What has begun to change there, and it's not down. In no sense are we saying that the Stove was behind that. We've been played a little part in it, but that the community has actually started to self-organise. There's been things like the Oyster Festival that people will know about that the community began, and then there's this. There's now these major capital investment projects that are coming on the back of some of that community action. So there's the regeneration of the former George Hotel, the water sports hub, the Millen coast-to-coast cycling route, and the marina expansion, which is also known as the One Waterfront. And that has been all captured in the community's place plan, which you see on the left-hand side there, and which involves 6 key priorities, including the revitalisation of the town centre, which Creative Stranraer is actually leading on that town centre revitalisation, which is called the Big Makeover. And this is sort of what's been emerging, is this idea of an active tourism destination focused on a local economy. So you've got the new harbour area, and then you've got the town centre area there that's sort of backing up what's happening in the harbour. So that vision is now emerging, and it's a case of getting people behind that. In terms of like where this came, there were consultations and work with major local stakeholders like the Development Trust, Stranraer Development Trust. And it was recognised that there was a real gap for a local creative organisation. There was literally no sort of development support for the creative economy in Stranraer. Probably, the next nearest thing really, if you go east from Stranraer, is Catstrand, which is a good sort of like 50 miles away. So that whole there's Wigton book festival, but that's specifically literature. So there was literally no support for the creative sector down there, and there was also an idea that that creative approach could help to engage less heard voices that are not getting a say in some of this consultation. So the Stove was already active in Stranraer through the what we do now pilot project that placed artists Hope London and Rory Laycock in Stranraer, and they were sort of having a great time running around Stranraer, drawing attention to what the potential, to get that conversation going about how people could get involved and what could be changed. And they started this colouring book that you see down here. They printed 1,000 of those colouring books and distributed them around the town of buildings that could become part of the future of Stranraer. And what happened with that is that building there, which is the George Hotel, was one of the bits of that colouring book, and that grew into this capital project for a new sort of community centre in the middle of the town. So the Stove was working with a lot of those key stakeholders, and with their agreement, the Stove helped to form a new organisation in and for Stranraer that called Creative Stranraer. It was constituted in November 2023, and the Stove will continue to support its organisational growth up to our planned exit point of July next year, at which time what we do now will then become the sort of connection between the Stove, continuing connection between the Stove and Creative Stranraer. So Graham, who should be standing here, is working as the interim director of Creative Stranraer at the moment, and he spends 1 day a week in Stranraer working with 2 local members of staff and a volunteer board of trustees. And the Stove is also supporting with communications and with artistic direction. So, what's next, Graham? Okay. Yeah, so Creative Stranraer got itself going by starting a hub, and that happened because one of the things that the community was saying right from the beginning was we just need to brighten up Stranraer a bit. So Janet Jones, who was one of those local members of staff, found this wall and said, let's turn that into a mural. We brought down this artist who worked with the community. Everything on that mural has got some sort of local connection. The Swan Vestas is something to do with a superstition about fishing boats or something about you can't take Swan Vestas on a fishing boat. I can't remember exactly. But what also happened is that the down here, that's a disused shop unit, and Janet somehow, which was in a really poor state, but Janet somehow managed to convince Mr. Gillespie, who owned that building, to spend £20,000 of his own money fixing up that building so that we could rent it off him for £400 a month. Janet is not somebody you say no to. As I have learned to my cost. So that then became the Creative Stranraer hub. We have a monthly community-led programme of creative groups there, of drawing, writing. We have the Hubbub group for kids on a Saturday morning, film screenings and exhibitions. We support engagement and platforming of the other town projects and initiatives through a thing called the Vision and Action meetings. We do those every 2 months. They're a sort of town hall style meeting which now local projects use widely to bring their projects to show them to the community. We have 2 part-time staffmen we talked about, and just under 5,000 people have directly been engaged with Creative Stranraer activity, which is almost half the population of the town. So, it says, why is this important to the Stove? Why is it important? So Graham's saying this is, it's a proof of concept in the way that we work that can be applicable regionally about getting something started in a place, getting it up on its feet and then being able to step back, but have a link to continued support. It's an evidence base to show how the creative placemaking works in Stranraer. It's become a really good example for us. It's an income stream because of the way that we've been supporting those capital projects, and it's growing capacity skills and expanding the network and thinking across the region. So it's helped integrate our approach and experience into wider agencies and systems, for example, delivering creative community engagement to inform the design of a new waterfront area in Stranraer. So what you're looking at there is the slide that Kirsty showed of the two boats with text on their sails. Those were launched in front of this community event here, where we were showing these boards which came from conversations that had been inspired by that artist residency in Stranraer, and people were then giving their feedback on the ideas that had come from the rest of the community, and those ideas then have been fed into the design plan for the waterfront, and hopefully an art programme will be associated with that to fulfil some of the art ideas, although they weren't all art ideas by any stretch. And that is, it's enabling opportunities to embed artists in communities. It's helping to identify the opportunity for art to be embedded into aspects of capital investment and public realm design, and it's expanding opportunities available to freelancers across the region. And yeah, that's what Creative Stranraer is, and it's going pretty well, I think.